Hey, hi, hello. Welcome to Diana Emerson today. We are listening to Watching the Detectives. This is NYPD.
He thought she was nice. He wanted to meet her. Of course, that's not true because he said, "Well, you ring the doorbell, you don't climb in through the kitchen window." Basically, when we got back to the precinct, he just looked at me and he said, "I just needed to do it because they didn't show me any love."
Homicide cases are really very, very personal for detectives. You have more of a sense of who the person is in death than many of their closest friends have of who they were in life.
Road Rage.
Working in the homicides in New York is the ultimate crime. The taking of one life is kind of the pinnacle of a criminal act. And to investigate it, you're at the top of your game. You're working towards finding the person that's responsible for doing that. It was a major holiday, and a family, husband, wife, and their 3-year-old daughter were coming back from having dinner and celebrating the holiday with their family. And they got involved in a road rage incident. Car is following too close. Driver just taps his brakes. The car following this car becomes irate. He slows down. He goes into the lane parallel with the car and proceeds to roll down the window and fire into the car, shattering the rear window of the car. One bullet actually enters the trunk and exits in between the 3-year-old's car seat, in between her legs. Doesn't hurt the baby in the car. And another bullet lodges in the wife's head. Now, the husband is frantic. He's trying to get out of the way. He speeds up. He changes lanes. He gets off at the exit. He's not really 100% sure of the neighborhood. And because it's a holiday weekend, stores are closed, and it's a residential neighborhood, he's not familiar with the neighborhood. So he drives frantically trying to find a place to call 911, a place to seek help. Hopefully he does. He finds a gas station, call 911, we all respond. But at this point, he's away from the crime scene, and because of the moment, he's not sure where this actually happened. He's not sure of the make and model of the car because it was 10 o'clock at night and all he saw was lights in his rearview mirror. So we don't have a witness, we don't have a weapon, we don't have any crime scene to really work on. Ultimately, the wife goes to the hospital where she expires and she dies. We do the best we can, but under the circumstances, we had nothing to work on. We work on it, the news picked it up, and we were seeking help and tips. And we got a few calls, but nothing that would really help us. The case is dead. Now, a year later, on that same holiday, at the same time, we block off this major highway. And we had cars backed up for miles. But it's something that had to be done. We were just hoping that the same people who were visiting family then are visiting family again now. And we really didn't get anything. What happens now is kind of odd. Detectives from another precinct are investigating a burglary. And they go to the suspect's house. They meet the suspect in this burglary. And the suspect said, "You haven't got anything on me. You could search my room if you'd like. You got the wrong guy." So these detectives go into his bedroom. They noticed on a vanity mirror a little picture that was cut out of a newspaper at the time of this homicide of this little baby girl. Here is a kind of a disheveled, disgruntled person, and he's got this picture of this little baby. So now questions are raised, and we start to look into this further, and we start to work on this person now as a possible suspect. He had a history of stalking women. He was kind of an oddball character, had a volatile temper. The person that he was alleged to have burglarized her house, he was also stalking her. And we found out that she had filed a complaint on this same holiday at around the same time that this homicide occurred, which now raises our elevation of this guy now maybe the suspect that we're looking for. So we now found out about his employment. Now his employment would have taken him directly from his house to where he works in the same highway that where this incident occurred. And sure enough, he works the midnight shift. So he was on his way to work, possibly on the same road. So all the things are starting to fit in. It's not really a lot to go to a district attorney with and really prove a case. We let the burglary case go through the courts, and he pleads guilty, and he gets sentenced to 18 months, and he gets sent upstate. Which time, before he gets lodged into the state system, we put him in a cell where I have an informant. We said, "You're gonna get a new roommate, and I want you to be his best friend." And he wants to know more. He wants to be helpful. He wants to do anything because I've been doing things for him all this time. He wants to be overly helpful. Tell me, what should I ask him? I said, "You're not going to ask him anything. You don't know anything. You're just going to become his best friend." So for 3 months, we let them become friends. And I get calls every day telling me, "Tom, this guy is nuts. He's got some issues. He's nuts. He's kind of got a strange temper. He's got a strange temperament. He's just an odd boy. So just be his friend. Just be a nice guy to him. Don't worry about it. You'll know. You'll know when something happens." And then myself and two other detectives, we go up to see our murder suspect. And we bring him into a room where we start to just scream at him and say, you're our guy. You're the guy we're going to go after. We know you were involved in this." And he's denying it, but you can just see that the blood pressure's rising. He's turning red in the face. The veins in his neck are popping out. And he's just beside himself with anger, which was a perfect time for us to just close up our books and walk out. Now the corrections officers come up, pick him up, and they bring him to his cell. And then we just sit by the phone. And not less than 24 hours later, I get a call from my guy. And he says, "Tom," he goes, "you're not going to believe what this guy told me." I says, "Try me." And he proceeds to tell me the entire story of what happened. That he was stalking a woman that he worked with, and he thinks he may have been seen, and he was all upset, and he had to race from that person's house to home to change into his work clothes, get back on the highway, and go to work and not be late. It all fit in, and he now details everything about the homicide. Everything. We go to the district attorney with this, and the district attorney says it's great, and we know that he's the guy, but to successfully prosecute this case, you can't take the sole information of a convicted felon, especially one who spent most of his adult life in jail. Around the same time, my informant and our suspect are in anger management classes at the correctional facility, where you can see that this guy is he's just beside himself with anger. And he gets up in front of this anger management class and proceeds to say that whoever ratted him out, he's going to kill. He's going to find out who did this to him, and he's going to kill him. That's the end of the relationship between our suspect and our informant. So they take him out of the cell, they put him in solitary confinement, and they're trying to figure out what to do with him because he's still got about 6 months left of his 18-month burglary sentence. We realize the district attorney needs more. We can't use this informant any longer. We know that he's going to be transferred to finish out his sentence, so we put him in a cell with a second informant that we have. He's whisked in the middle of the night, he's put on a bus, he's taken to this second prison where he's thrust into a cell with another guy, where he proceeds to now not only tell the story, but add little things that really tighten up the case against him. Second informant calls up and tells us the story. We said, put everything on paper, write everything down, and thank you. We go to the grand jury, we indict him for murder, and now the big gate opens up. Out comes our suspect, happy as a clam. He's got a big smile on his face, and we just told him that he's going back to jail. Put the handcuffs on him, and that's where he is today. You're never going to bring the woman back, but you are going to give the husband closure, which ultimately every victim's family needs that. There's such a tremendous job satisfaction. It's just a wonderful feeling.
It was late on a Friday afternoon. We were all getting ready to go home for, nice weekend. When we get a call from the desk sergeant in the precinct, we had a female Hispanic laying at the bottom of a set of stairs, unconscious. We respond over, myself and 3 or 4 detectives. And when we arrived, of course, the usual crowd had gathered, the carnival-like atmosphere of a crime scene. When we walk inside the building, we look, and there's a female Hispanic, probably in her late 60s, early 70s, laying at the bottom of the stairs, head first, with a pool of blood. A bag of groceries that she apparently was carrying was strewn all over the place. We had a feeling that what we had was a little bit more than a slip and fall. When we walk inside the building, we look, and there's a female Hispanic, probably in her late 60s, early 70s, laying at the bottom of the stairs, head first, with a pool of blood. A bag of groceries that she apparently was carrying was strewn all over the place. We had a feeling that what we had was a little bit more than a slip and fall. She looked like she had fallen from quite a distance. At the scene, we have the superintendent of the building, who's hysterical crying. Turns out that this is his wife. This is his whole world. He has no children. We interviewed him. They had moved here probably 40 years ago from a Latin American country, and they'd made a life together in America. We found out what her routine was. She was a nurse's aide, was on her way home, stopped at the supermarket, was going to make a special dinner to celebrate his birthday. Now that that birthday is just shattered. That all his entire world is shattered, and we have nothing. We have absolutely nothing. We have no witnesses. We have no motive. We have no reason. She had a fanny packet in the front that was still there. She had her keys were still there. Her money was still with her. Her wallet was still with her. We knew we had a homicide. We just didn't know why. We didn't know how. We had no motive. We find out that her husband is a soccer coach for many of the youth in the neighborhood. Having never had any children of their own, they kind of adopted all kinds of kids in the neighborhood as they're adoptive kids. They were just beloved by everybody, and the neighborhood was in shock that this woman met such an untimely death. When we were up in the apartment, we asked for a couple of pictures of him and her that we might possibly use in wanted posters down the road, or we might appeal to the local newspaper to see if they can help us solve the case. He gives us his picture, and sure enough, it's a picture of the two of them on vacation, and they're just having the time of their lives. And this is the picture it hands me, and it just it struck a nerve for me because these lives are shattered now. We're front stage on something that's just so tragic. We bring him back to the precinct and take a picture of him also, for no other reason than to have a picture of him on file. As luck would have it, we start to get a pattern of female Hispanics are robbed in the lobby of their apartment buildings in a pretty tight cluster to where this happened. So we know now that if we can solve this robbery, we can find out who's done this. And we get our break one Saturday afternoon. 2 cops on patrol bring a victim of one of these robberies up. Victim, probably the robbery happened maybe 5 minutes in the past. And we go to an area in the precinct where someone, if they sold jewelry, would likely go pawn it. We go into one of the pawn shops, and sure enough, we find her jewelry. And no sooner do we get out in the street with our recent victim, she starts to tremble uncontrollably. And we was asking her, what's wrong? And she's speechless, but she's pointing at some guy sitting on a bicycle. So I asked, well, why are you pointing? What's with the guy on the bicycle? And she goes, that's him. That's the man that robbed me. So we walk over to him, myself and another detective. And this guy, his heart is beating out of his chest, and he's in a real cold sweat. So we know that we have something here. We transport him into the precinct, and to kill a little time, we put him in some lineups, and he gets identified by a few more victims.
Number two. Number two, you sure?
But we still don't have that one thing we want. We know that he's involved with our victim, and we want him. We want to get that confession.
Out of this world. We're from around here. You know this.
We're sitting in the interrogation room with him for a real long time, number of hours, and little by little, he's coming around and he says, I know what you guys are looking for. He kind of gives us teases. He teases us and lets us know that he's gonna tell us what we need to know, but he's gonna tell it to us on his time frame. And now the interesting thing, or the ironic thing, we know that our victim's husband had been a soccer coach in the neighborhood, and he was just like such a great guy to everyone. And it turns out that this kid, sure enough, had played soccer for our victim's husband. So we have now a little bit of a personal appeal on this, and we're waiting. We're not going to use it quite yet, but we're waiting for the right time to spring that on him. So he tells us, listen, I'm getting tired and I need to go to sleep. Wait till the morning and I'll tell you guys what you need to know. Now, we had taken pictures of the victim at the scene. We had the picture of the victim and her husband on vacation, and we had the picture of the victim's husband hysterical crying the day that his wife was killed. So, I looked at him and I said, listen, before you go to sleep, I just want to show you a couple pictures, and I want you to get a good mind's eye on these. And I throw down a picture of the happy couple with the drinks, with the umbrellas. I throw down a picture of our victim laying dead, and I throw down a picture of our victim's husband. Now he realizes that he's just killed his soccer coach's wife. And he just looked at me and he goes, I can't go to sleep now. I said, I didn't think you could. And he said, I don't know why she wouldn't just give me the fanny pack. If she would have just given me the fanny pack, none of this would have happened.
She could have only given me her purse. It would have been good. Give me your money.
I just needed the money. And sure enough, he tried to pull the fanny pack off of her, and down the stairs she went backwards, smacks her head on the bottom landing, and it kills her. And the thing about this case is, detectives live and breathe their cases. Homicide cases are really very, very personal for detectives. You have more of a sense of who the person is in death than many of their closest friends have of who they were in life. And there's always that one case that has your heart as an investigator. And in this case was it for me. After we solved the case, I was probably up for about 25 hours. The crime scene was probably only 2 or 3 blocks from the precinct. And I walked down the block, and there was our victim's husband with a bunch of his friends on the stoop. And he knew why I was there. He came right over to me, and he just started crying. And I looked him in the eye, and I said, we found the person that killed your wife. And it was probably the most gratifying moment for me as a New York City cop. And that's the case that'll just always have my heart.
You ready? precinct. It was mid-afternoon. We got a call from family members looking for their family. They had tried to call them several times within the last few days, and they didn't get any response. They then went over to the house, and they didn't get any response at the door, which was very strange to them because they said, that the parents were basically homebodies at that point. So they came to the police for assistance. They went over to the house with the police, and the police didn't get any response. They forced their way into the basement of the house, where they found a female victim who was apparently shot 4 or 5 times on the couch that was down in the basement. They then told the family members to stay outside. They then started searching the house, and they found additional victims upstairs. The other victims they found were the parents who were in their bedroom, in their bed, shot several times themselves. In the other bedroom, there was a male with a female who they didn't know at that time, who was also shot and killed in that bedroom. So there's a total of 5 people that were killed in this house. So they called us, we responded to the scene, and at that point it was just total chaos out front of us. I mean, there was more police cars there. I don't know how news reporters got wind of this already, but they were responding to the scene and everything else. And at this point, you don't know what direction to go with. It didn't appear to be like a home invasion robbery or anything else that they were involved in. The doors were locked, the house was secured, there was no broken windows, so who got in here to kill these people? It was then told to us that there was a grandson living there who was a 17 or 18-year-old fellow. He wasn't there, though, when we searched the house. Well, where was this person? From what we can gather from these people who really didn't have a good relationship with this kid, was that he comes and goes and wherever he pleases, and that he's a very quiet kid, and I don't know where he is. The 17-year-old was the only one left alive in this family, so naturally we wanted to speak with him to find out if, in fact, he was there when this happened, or if he had knowledge about this, or anything else. In doing a canvass in the area over there, we were able to find out from one of the neighbors that the following morning, late in the afternoon, I would say about 1 to 3 o'clock in the afternoon, they saw him leaving the house, get into a cab, and leave with a suitcase. We were able to find out he had a girlfriend. We contacted her, and we had her come into the precinct. She said that she had spoken to him a few days prior, and that he had told her that he was going up to the Rochester area up in New York, and that he would be up there for some time because he was doing some business up there, meaning that she knew that he was involved in dealing drugs on a small type of level. He had a house that she knew, or a contact number that she knew that she could call to reach him. And this was a cell phone or a phone number to somebody else that, could reach out and get to him, a friend of his up there. And she was able to contact this person. She spoke to this, and she said, yeah, I saw what she would refer to as Junebug. That was his nickname. He was up here a few days now, and I'll try to get a hold of him. The person who she spoken to was able to find him and brought him back to the house, and he called her, the girlfriend, from that house. We were there listening to the conversation. I'm worried. Basically, he gave her a statement over the phone that he broke down and that he had killed his parents, his cousin, and it was his cousin's girlfriend that was the female victim, and the other cousin, the younger one, downstairs in the basement. That he couldn't take it anymore, that he was sick and tired of them not treating him right, not giving him things that he wanted, and basically that, he felt like he was an outsider. He didn't feel like there was any love in that house, and that he couldn't take it anymore. So he decided to come home. He knew that his cousin left a gun in the safe because he was a drug dealer himself, and he took the gun out. He had the weapon with him. It was up in Rochester, that he had taken a bus up there. With this information, we had contacted the Rochester police. I spoke to a detective up there, and I gave him all this information that we wanted to find this fellow, and that if you can find him for us, we would come up there and get a full statement from him and probably charge him with the murder of his relatives. He told me to send a photo up there of him. So the next morning I get to work, and I called this detective. It's about 10 o'clock in the morning. He said, yeah, I got the photo of it. I'm looking through it now, and I'll reach out to the people who I know that, he knows. And he said, but I can't do it right now because we just got a shooting ourselves. and it's a shooting of 3 people. I have to go out on that, and I'll get back to you later on today. So this detective, along with his fellow detectives, went out to this crime scene where they had 3 people originally thought were just shot. Well, it turns out there was 3 people murdered inside a house that was very familiar to them as a drug location. This young fellow went in there and he shot 3 people, one in the basement, 2 upstairs. And right after the shooting happened, another female came to the house to buy some drugs. This suspect confronted her, but didn't do anything to her. And she saw the bodies laying on the living room, and he just walked out. So when the detectives got there, they interviewed her, and she said, "I know him as to be Junebug."
Junebug?
Yeah, Junebug. How long have you known him? Well, this detective looks around. He said, "Wait a second." He goes, "I just spoke to a guy from New York City about a guy named Junebug. How many Junebugs could there be?" He takes out this photo that I sent him. This the guy? Yeah, that's Junebug. He says, "This is the guy that killed these 3 people." She says, "This is the guy that when I walked into this home, he was standing here with a gun in his hand, and there was people laying on the floor." So they called me back, and he says, "You're not going to believe this." He says, "But apparently your fellow shot and killed 3 other people up here, and now we're looking for him for the same thing." So I think it was like a day or two later, through informants that they had, they were able to find out that he was hiding in the basement of a church up in that area. They went into this church along with the pastor of this church. He was sleeping in the basement of this church, and they apprehended him. This young fellow who was 17, 18 was responsible for killing 8 people. I remember coming back with him on the plane, and he just sat there, just staring into space. Basically, when we got back to the precinct, he just looked at me and he said, "I just needed to do it because they didn't show me any love."
Okay. Mm, mm, mm. Well, it's over 17.
Was assigned to the Special Victim Squad in Queens. On one particular night, we received a case of a woman who was sleeping in her bed, and somebody broke into her house and raped her. We were notified by the patrol officers that this occurred. One team of detectives went to the hospital to interview her and gather information on what occurred, and myself and 2 other detectives went to the scene to gather evidence. The woman lived in a 3-story garden apartment complex in Fresh Meadows, Queens. Crime scene unit came to the residence, and we noted that the subject had entered the house by cutting the screen in the kitchen, climbing in through the window. Fingerprints were recovered from the apartment. Looking at the crime scene, you can see that the jewelry box was emptied out. The drawers had been gone through. There was apparently a computer missing from the computer desk. The following morning, we did an extensive canvass of the neighborhood, and we found no witnesses to anyone lingering around the area or entering or exiting the house. According to the detectives at the hospital, the woman also indicated that she had a camera on her night table, and that the subject picked up this camera and taken several photographs of her naked on her bed. We then went through the jewelry box and removed jewelry and took her computer as well and exited out the front door. The day following the rape, my partner and I went back to the area where this occurred, and we started canvassing and speaking to witnesses. This really creepy guy who's been walking around the neighborhood. He walks around at night usually, and he's just peeping in people's windows. Being that we had nothing else to go on, we convinced one of these people if they would come with us the following night to sit in an observation van with us and try and identify who this person was. They said they didn't know who he was, but they knew him by sight. The following night, we'd set up about 10 o'clock at night, and we knew we were going to be there for a couple of hours. So we had sodas, potato chips, cheese doodles. We just needed to keep this witness with us for as long as possible to try and identify the peeping Tom. Within 30 seconds of us sitting there, we just opened up our soda, and along came the peeping Tom. That's it, right? Sure? Yeah, sure, it's him. That guy right there. So my partner and I got out of the van. We approached the man, who was very nervous. And
we told him there was a crime that was committed in the area and that we needed to talk to him to see if he was a witness to anything. As we were talking to him, he kept looking back at the window of the woman who was sexually assaulted. So we knew something was up. Once we got to the precinct, we sat him down in our interrogation room, and we got some soda, we got some donuts and pizza, and we sat talking for almost 2 hours. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get any information from him about the crime, other than he does walk around the neighborhood, he does live in the area, and he was in the area at the time of the crime. It was about 11:30 at night, and I called the victim up on the phone. And during our conversation, I explained that I had a suspect and I would like her to come down and do a lineup. At that point, she cut me off in mid-sentence and said, "Detective, I can't view a lineup. I cannot identify this man." And I said to her, "Well, I've been doing this a long time. I've had many, many cases, and I may not be able to identify him, but maybe from his stature or the sound of his voice or just his physique." And she cut me off again and she said, "You're not listening to me. I'm telling you, I can't identify anybody because I'm blind." So I looked at the complaint report and all the interview reports, and nowhere does it say she's blind. "Well, what do you mean? You're colorblind, or you see shadows?" She goes, "I'm blind. I'm legally blind." So perplexed, I stood there for a few minutes. And I said, "Okay, I'll call you back in a few minutes." And I hung the phone up, and it's like 12:30 at night at this point, and I decided to call my partner who did the interview up. They picked the phone up, and I said, "Is there something you forgot to tell me from the interview?" And he says, "No, everything's there. Everything's in the case folder's there, it's all up to date." And I said, "Did you forget to tell me that she was blind?" And he says, "Oh, yeah, I forgot about that." I'm like, "Did you think that was important?" We both knew we had a big problem here because most cases are made in court on eyewitness identification, and there was no way of getting an eyewitness identification in the case where you have a victim that's blind. So we knew we had to go above and beyond to try and get some evidence to convict this guy because this was a real problem. We had called the fingerprint section to see if they could identify the subject's prints with the prints that were obtained inside the apartment, but they weren't available. It was 11:30, 12 o'clock at night. They were not available to do that until the following day. So we devised a plan. He had been drinking a can of soda in there. We removed the can with a pair of tweezers right in front of him for his benefit, and we left him in the interview room. Now, neither myself nor my partner knew anything about fingerprints. So we ended up getting a fingerprint kit, and we just covered the Coke can with fingerprint powder. We then took a print card, and I took my own fingerprint, my own thumbprint, put it on the print card, went to the photocopy machine and blew it up 2 times. I took a VCR tape, I put a piece of masking tape over it, I wrote video surveillance on it. We put that in a box along with a Coke can and along with a Bible that we had found in the office and a few other pieces of paper. And then we walked in and I put the box down right in front of him. I took everything out and put it on the table in front of him. And he was beside himself. He didn't know what was going on. I said, "See these 2 fingerprints?" And they were obviously blown up on a large piece of paper. I said, "Do they look the same?" And he said, "Absolutely," as he studied them. I said, "This print is from that Coke can that was covered with the powder. This print is from the kitchen of the woman that was assaulted." And he looked at that and I said, "Here's the surveillance tape." I said to him, "Obviously there's a problem here and you have to explain what's going on." I said, "The good part is the woman does not want to press charges. If she gets the computer back, she's willing to forget the whole thing." When interviewing a person like that and trying to elicit a confession, we often bend the truth a lot. And basically, we put the person at ease, de-escalate the crime to make them feel that this wasn't really a big deal. So he seemed a little bit relieved, and he thought about it for a while. I said, "I have enough evidence here to convict you. It's your choice now." He looked over at the Bible and looked up at us, and he said, yes, that he had been in her apartment, that he was sorry, and he'd never done anything like this before. So we took a pad of paper out, we gave him a pen, and we told him to accurately describe exactly what happened that night, and which time he wrote out a hand confession. And when he wrote down what occurred, he said that he had seen the woman often around the neighborhood and smiled at her, and he thought she was nice, and that he wanted to meet her. Was his version of what happened. Of course, that's not true because if you want to meet somebody, you ring their doorbell. You don't climb into the kitchen window. After he wrote out the confession, he kept saying that he was really sorry for this. And I said, "If you're truly sorry, why don't you indicate that as well?" And he then wrote a letter of apology to both the woman and the judge that he was going to have to state. The next day, We did a search warrant in the subject's house, and we in fact recovered the jewelry, the computer, the camera, and other items that were missing from the woman's house. A day and a half later, we were still processing everything, and a uniformed police officer asked to speak to me. And he says, "Listen, I have a problem. I got to ask you something." I said, "Well, what do you need? What's the problem?" He says, my sister was engaged to this guy, and he got arrested, and, maybe you can just explain something to me. He's a really nice guy. He really didn't do anything wrong." He says, "This is all misunderstanding." I'm like, "Well, who's the guy?" And it turns out it was the person who was the subject of this rape case that confessed to me. So he says, she really loves him. She thinks he's a nice guy. So I said, "Let me explain something to you." I took him into the back room. I showed him the written confession. I showed him the videotape confession. I showed him the property that was removed from his house that was the woman's property. And I said, this is really not a misunderstanding. If he wanted to meet this woman like he's telling your sister and like he first told us, he would have rang the doorbell and spoke to her. He climbed in through the window, he broke the window, cut the screen, and forcibly raped the woman and removed his property from the house. So he looked at me and said, "Okay, no problem." Turned around and walked out. Never saw him again. When the subject went to arraignment, he was deeply remorseful for what happened. He really thought he was going to get away with it because he thought the woman was not going to testify and she really was going to drop the charges when she got her property back. So at the time of the first hearing, he decided not to go to trial and he pled guilty. And because of that, the defense attorney and the subject never found out that the woman was blind. And to this date, he still doesn't know after he served his 7.5 years in jail.
Okay. Mommy dearest. Okay.
We're in the office, and we get a call. We got a homicide. It's on a street we used to call Snake Hill. Growing up in the Bronx, which is a very windy street from the Bedford Park area over to Riverdale. It's in a residence. I get up to the scene. My scene goes off. We have a 60-year-old woman in the kitchen, stabbed to death numerous times. Blood all over the place. The knife apparently right out of the butcher block in the kitchen. At the scene, the husband shows up. He'd gotten off of work. The husband was a doctor, originally from South America. And he's totally doesn't know what's going on. You can just imagine he comes home from work, there's crime scene tape, there's police cars and all kinds of detectives and stuff in and out of his house. So we have to break the bad news that his wife had been killed. And he informs us that there were some Mexican workers at the house doing some home improvements, and that his wife had gotten into an argument just the day before with one of them. She had thought that he stole something from the house. So our original thought was maybe this guy that got fired had come back, or there was some type of dispute. Now the son shows up, and we have to tell him what happened.
Oh my God! No, is she okay? What?
And he breaks down. He's, and you can tell he's kind of a little like mama boyish to begin with. He's like a little bit nerdy. He's not, you could tell right away. And we had asked him when the last time he saw his mother, and he was like, he hadn't been there since yesterday. They were planning his wedding, and we console him. We tracked down some of the Mexican workers, but we can't track down the one that had been fired. They're saying that the son had come over the house, and the mother had asked them to leave and go home. And they weren't going to argue with her because she was very stern. She treated them very poorly all the time. And she'd accused their friend of stealing something, and he didn't take anything.
I don't know what happened. Yeah, she's crazy, man.
Did she come outside and she gives you guys a hard time?
So we had kind of told him, you're covering for your friend. Your friend came back. He got into an argument again with her. He was taken out, and their story was all the same. We go in to talk to the son, and the son is telling us, he loves his mother very much, and it should be the happiest time of his life. He's getting married. Well, in the course of talking to the son, another team had tracked down the Mexican worker that had gotten fired, and we start talking to him.
Now.
The woman was a tyrant. He had never gone back to the house.
So we go back at the son because the workers had told us that the son was there that day, and we confront him with his lie that he hadn't seen his mother from the day before. But he says he was so upset that he got confused and he wasn't sure when he saw his mother last. But now we're really zeroing in on him because he seems like he's lying to us. We go out and we find his fiance and we start talking to her.
I want to thank you for meeting us today. Questions we want to ask you about your fiance.
She tells us that her future mother-in-law is just horrible. She's a real bitch.
There are a lot of different options for flowers, but I think what we finally decided is that something simple, really classic.
She's just so controlling, and nothing's right unless it's her decision. Nobody else can make a right decision unless it's her. She took these wedding plans and turned them into everything was going to be her decision. And she had started off, no, you kids do whatever you want, and she just turned into a controlling woman.
These flowers are really going to make a statement. That is no way to run away. These are all handmade desserts. What do you think?
So now we go back to the son and we tell him, listen, we talked to your fiance. And we know that you had a big problem with your mother.
I love my mother.
He just started talking to us and he's telling us, this is the happiest time of my life, and he was in denial.
I would never be a part of something that hurt her.
And he went from, I love my mother very, very much, to, no, I couldn't have possibly did that to my mother. No, don't say it. No, I couldn't have did that. And he's going on.
I'm here. Start from the beginning.
Right, this is not what happened. This is how I did it.
He says, my whole life, my mother, just constantly, it was nothing ever good enough. But your father's a doctor and you're going to be nothing. And when I went to school, my grades were never good enough. And, I wasn't good enough to be her son. And constantly over the years. Well, now I meet this girl and my mother finally acknowledges that this girl's a nice girl. But it was all a ruse because as soon as we started to make the wedding plans, here I am, engaged, getting married, and she just took over all the wedding plans. She just took over everything, and then she started talking bad about my fiance. She's no good. She's probably a slut. And this is going on and on. Well, I go to my mother's house today, and I'm going to set her straight and tell her, listen, we want to plan our own wedding. But we get into this argument.
You're a monster!
And she pulls out a knife out of the thing and says, you're not my son. I gave you life. I should take your life. And she came at me with the knife. I grabbed the knife from her, and I just, the next thing I know, she was on the floor. There was blood everywhere. I just dropped the knife, and I left. I got out of there. I got rid of all the bloody clothes, and I just felt such a relief after I killed her that all this weight was off my shoulders because of how long she tortured me. This poor kid, he winds up getting 20 to life. And in all my years, homicide, I never felt bad for somebody who killed somebody. Never mind somebody who killed his mother. But if there was one person I felt bad for,
That kid.
you can see the abuse this kid had through his whole life. Now, it's not right. You don't kill anybody. But I never felt so bad locking somebody up in my life like I did for this poor kid.
The guy, I guess from bleeding, he goes down. I pick up a vase and I hit him over the head with the vase. It's Flex just starts stabbing him. He keeps stabbing him. What is this guy, an idiot? You killed 4 people. You think that the police aren't going to find out that you did it?
I took this socket wrench, I beat her over the head. Then my mother was yelling for me. I went and I fed her.
Yeah, Bob. The brother comes out the back, and I was shocked along with the Suffolk County detectives because they couldn't believe it either. He looks just like Santa Claus.
cut to the chase.
I work in a day tour out of the homicide squad. We got a call from 9 precinct detectives that they had a possible homicide on the Lower East Side. The radio call guys get a radio call for calls for help in this apartment building on the Lower East Side. They get over there. They don't know who called 911 at that point, and they start doing a search of the building where the address was given, and they don't see anything. So the cops are smart. They took it upon themselves to go up the fire escape in the front of the house and see if they could look into the windows. Sure enough, they get to the second floor and they look into the window and they see a bloody mess crime scene in this apartment on the second floor. So the cops, they come down, they break into the apartment, that they figure out which apartment it is, and there's a guy in the bathroom, inside the bathroom, halfway into the living room area, stabbed to death. So we get the call from the 9th precinct detectives to go over and assist them on this homicide. So we show up. I've seen a lot of homicides and a lot of crime scenes. This is probably one of the most brutal murders I've seen. This guy was hacked up, bad. The place was a mess. It looked like there was a huge fight. Broken glass everywhere. There was a broken vase. It was just a real mess. Turns out this guy, is a drug dealer. So right away we start thinking motive, maybe it was a robbery, but at the same time, we're looking at the violence and the homicide, how bad it was. These guys had to know. Well, this guy, whoever, we didn't know how many people did this homicide. We do a canvas and got a little leeway with one of the kids in the neighborhood who said, the guy that knows the guy that got killed, he was hanging out on the corner and he had a bandage on his hand like he got cut. So, what's his name? He didn't know his name, but he told us his nickname. He said his nickname was Flex. All right, so now we start running the name Flex in the computer. And we come up with a guy's name and a couple of addresses that he used when he was arrested. Plus, we run all the names of the guys he was arrested with. We go out to look for the guy. So now we go to the mother's house. He's not around. We go to the girlfriend's house that he was living with. He's not around there. This guy Flex apparently found out we were looking for him, so he comes walking into the station house. We start to interview him, bring him in. He goes, what are you guys looking for? So I give him the old story of, we know this guy got murdered. We understand you might know him. We're just seeing if you could help us out. I give him the old help us out routine, see if he can at least talk to us. So I asked him to get in, let me ask you something. When's the last time you saw this guy? He's like, I haven't seen him in a long time. It's been years. He says, you know anything about him dealing drugs? He's like, I heard that he was dealing drugs, but I don't know anything about that. So he danced around everything. Comes to the point, I asked him how he cut his hand. He says to me, I was helping some homeless guy up on 14th Street move some bags, and he had glass in it, and it cut my hand. I said, that's too bad. I said, you mind if I see it? He says, nah, it's all bandaged up. I can't. Well, how many stitches did you get? So I got like 25 stitches. I'm like, man, that's a lot of stitches. So I said, all right. I got to tell you, your story sounds a little fishy to me. I'm not really comfortable with what you're telling me. I think you might know a little bit more than what you're telling me. Oh, no. So why don't you show me where the garbage can is with his glasses? And if I see the blood on the glasses, that'll be it. So we take them in the car. We drive around with him. We go to 14th Street. Ain't no garbage can. Ain't no bag. Nothing's around. So now I lay into him a little bit more. I said, listen, don't both me. Don't give me the story that this guy. What happened with your hand? So I'm telling you. I said, all right, come with me. We're gonna go to the hospital. I want to take a look at it. So we go over to Cabrini Hospital. And I have the physician assistant unwrap the hand. And sure enough, it's a straight cut, like it came from a knife. We wrap it back up. We take him back to the station house. And now we lay into him. I said, listen, don't lie. Because now we got nothing yet. We have no forensics yet. We have no witnesses. So we really don't have nothing other than what this guy's telling us. Now I get a little nervous with it. Now he's starting to give me that. When you're doing this a while, you kind of get that sense when somebody's ready to tell you, I want a lawyer. And we don't want that. So we got to let him go. We let him go. Now we get a blood print in the vase at the scene. Comes back to a guy named Ali, who's from the neighborhood. And what we've learned from computer checks that he ran with this guy Flex. So now we got his photo. We go out in the street. We look for him. We pick him up. One of the detectives sees him on the street. We pick him up and bring him in. The first detective's talking to him. They get into a whole thing with him. They got him in the guy's apartment saying that, I used to go up there, smoke pot with the guy. I used to clean the apartment for him. He used to pay me to clean the apartment. A real cock and bull story. We give him a little bit of time, and we hit him with it. Listen, your fingerprint, your blood print is in the apartment on a vase. The guy's dead, so stop the games. What's going on here? Sure enough, he gives up the whole case. He says he and this guy Flex decided to go rob him because they knew he always had money and drugs in the place. He says the guy, I guess from bleeding, he goes down. I pick up a vase and I hit him over the head with the vase. He said Flex just started stabbing him and keep stabbing him. So he says we grabbed some of the stash he had there, the drugs he had, and some cash, which wasn't a lot, maybe $1,200. He gives us the whole story. Now we go back out looking for Flex. Go back to the mother's house, go to the girlfriend's house, nobody's seen him. When I'm at the mother's house, my partner Billy's talking to the mother, and I kind of give him that look, like, let me take a look at the phone. I see a couple of numbers, she has that call log on the phone where you can read what numbers called, so I start writing down the phone numbers. Sure enough, we get a number that matches his same last name, so we're thinking maybe it's a relative, so it turns out it's his cousin. It's an apartment in the Lower East Side, so we go to the apartment, it's a duplex apartment, knock on the door. We walk out, we leave. A day or two later, we're working the case, still looking for him. We get a phone call, comes in, an anonymous phone call that he's held up at his cousin's house, the house we were at. We go back there with 4 of us now, so knocking on the door. Who is it? It's Detective DeShavi. Remember we spoke the other day? I just need to talk to you real quick. What do you want? Get out of here. I have nothing to say to you. He says, I'm going to get my dog. Next thing you know, he gets this dog. And he starts going nuts, the dog. And he's hitting the door. You can hear him trying to get through the door, the dog. So I'm like, listen, get rid of that dog. We just want to talk to you for a few minutes. Take it easy. Just let the dog away. No, I'm letting the dog loose. Now, here's 4 detectives. Not pants, like, oh my God, backing up without guns, I'm ready to hit this dog. He's looking to tear us all apart. So we're shooting at the guy, put the dog away. We just want to talk to you, put the dog away. This goes on for a couple of minutes, but it seems like an eternity. Now, if he let that dog go, we're going to have to shoot him. We don't want to take a chance. We don't get these kids in the apartment. You want to let a couple of stray bullets hit somebody that didn't deserve it. If these dogs are notorious, you shoot them in the head, it bounces off their skull, and the bullet goes flying. So we didn't want that to happen. We turn around, we get him to pull the dog in, and he makes the mistake of sticking his head out. So I grab him by the head, and I pull him out. I got him on the ground, the 4 of us got him on the ground, we're trying to get him handcuffed, and he's got the leash, and the dog's on the other side of the door, kind of telling him, listen, what are you doing? A stupid thing to be. We're going to kill your dog, and now you're going to jail for, trying to kill us. He says, I says, where's your cousin? Where's your cousin? Stop the baloney. Where is he? He says, he's in the apartment. I said, well, tell him to come down.
It's done, man. Listen to me. Put the dog in the bedroom and just come out. You want
Flex finally comes to the door. We pull him out. We handcuff him, and that was it. We take him back to the station. We tell him what we got, the evidence we got against him. We let him know, you're done. Just tell us what happened. So he goes into the whole story that he went up there to rob the guy, but then he starts saying, I didn't mean to stab him that many times. I look at the ME and I say, these are post-mortem wounds here. He says, yeah, they are. There's about 10 or 12 of them. So you knew there was a lot of passion behind this whole murder. So at the end of this case, we went to a hearing, and it was such overwhelming evidence against both these guys that they take a plea of 15 to life. So I'm probably never going to see them again. And I hope to God I never see that dog ever again in my life. That was in the police department approximately 15 years at the time, and into a lot of crime scenes, but this one was probably one of the worst I've ever seen. Working 4 to 1, about 11 o'clock, job came over, shots fired, multiple people shot. First they said there was a robbery. As I get there, they're actually dragging one of the victims out, a survivor. He's on his way to the hospital. He's telling me he's not going to make it. He's got multiple gunshot wounds all over him. They tell me to go into the back. That's where most of the scene is. In the back room, there a huge stainless steel walk-in refrigerator. Laid down on the floor is 4 bodies. Working 4 to 1, about 11 o'clock, job came over, shots fired. They tell me to go into the back. That's where most of the scene is. In the back room, there a huge stainless steel walk-in refrigerator. Laid down on the floor is 4 bodies. Shot multiple times. Shell casings everywhere. The only witness that we had saw a bunch of kids coming out of this bodega carrying a safe. He said it looks like the safe was way too heavy for them because they dropped it. Back when they dropped it, I think he said it dropped on one of the kids' ankles. The surviving witness, he got shot 5 or 6 times. You know, you're thinking this is it. If he goes, investigation's over. And when we found out that he was going to make us, because a lot of them went in and out, the bullets, it was like, this is great. We're going to be able to talk to this guy. He's going to tell us everything and be able to put all the pieces to the puzzle together. And he tells us a story where he's in the basement of his bodega and he hears noise down there. What the hell? What are you doing here? You can't sleep here. Get out of here. The kid leaves. He's gone for maybe 5 or 10 minutes. Next thing he knows, there's this kid coming in with 3 other people. I believe they thought it was a Dominican numbers bodega, so they expected to have a lot of money in there, which they didn't have a lot. And the guy he had seen in the basement that he knew from the neighborhood says to the guy with the Uzi, he's listen, he saw my face, he knows who I am. And the guy with the Uzi hands him the Uzi and says, well, you know what? The next thing he heard was I said he was laying behind his brother. His brother took most of the bullets, and that's how he thinks he survived. I got a hold of our Mirror Quick unit, which is a unit that carries only photos of people that have been arrested. They were able to go over to the hospital, show him pictures of people from the area. And at that time, he had pointed somebody out saying, this is the kid that I saw in the basement. I had left the office. It was probably after midnight. At that time, I received a call from one of the detectives saying that, listen, the perp you're looking for just walked into the precinct. He came in because his girlfriend had gotten locked up for robbery and he wanted to bring her a coat. So while he was waiting to give her a coat, the detective that was upstairs, he gets notified of a robbery arrest. He goes downstairs, and since this picture was on his desk, he's like, oh my God, this is the same guy that, Mike's looking for. What is this guy, an idiot? You just killed 4 people. You think that the police aren't going to find out that you did it? By the time I got back to the precinct, we sat him down, told him what we were looking for, heard him his rights. He gave us a complete description of what happened. Such a heinous crime and one of the easiest confessions we got. From the time that he came into the precinct at midnight till probably midnight the next day, the case was done. You think that just everything is good in the world, you're great, you solve this quadruple homicide, you're getting the pats on the back, and then everything goes down the drain. Got to be caught in the Bronx. He pled right out. I think, for 25 years. The guy that actually bought him the Uzi, he got convicted of 150 years to life. The guy that actually was hiding in the basement that actually did all the shooting, he got acquitted of all charges by the jury. I was pissed. I mean, you're mad. You're like, how can two guys get convicted and the guy actually did the shooting and the victim saying that's the guy that shot us, he got off. You talk to the family and say, I don't know what happened. The verdict just wasn't right. It wasn't the right thing. And sat down with the district attorney and said, there's got to be something else we can do. 4 people are killed here. We got to get this is eating at you. It eats at your stomach. That it's bad. We got to do something about it. I spoke to a couple of U.S. attorneys, and they came up with Hobbs Act robbery, where you just to go into any place and do a robbery where there's weapons involved. That's a crime. The guy that cooperated, he tells us that not for nothing, but the guy that went in to the bodega originally went in with a gun. The DA came out and said, go to that bodega. Maybe that gun is still there. I went to the bodega and went down into the basement where he was, and in this back room where the boiler room was, there was the gun on top of a shelf with a piece of cardboard, still with dust all over it that he had hidden up there. I said, "Oh, this is it. This is all we need. This is proven that he went in there." And we talked to the U.S. attorney. We get him indicted again on robbery charges. Running him, I ended up coming up with an address possibly in Georgia. It just so happens that he wanted to get a good guy letter from the Atlanta Police Department and decide that he was going to walk into a precinct again and ask them, I've been down in Georgia here now for 6 months or 7 months, whatever the case may be. Can I get a letter saying that I've been good because I'm trying to get a job? So at that time, the Atlanta Police Department, they run his name, and he comes up with a warrant. And the feds went down, picked him up, and we tried him. Here's a kid that had the arrogance to walk into a precinct not just once after killing 4 people, but twice. And both times he was arrested for the same act. He's just arrogant, I guess. Or is it stupidity? I don't know. Maybe it's stupidity. He got 150 years to life, and if he lives more than 150 years, maybe he'll get out. But I doubt
Getting late in the afternoon towards the end of our tour, when we receive a call from the desk sergeant downstairs saying a patrol had just found a box with a body in it down on 11th Avenue and 66th Street. We know we got something serious, so we all go down there. Myself and 2 or 3 of my partners. Sure enough, we get to the scene and there's this plywood box lying on the sidewalk. We speak to the 2 gentlemen who found the box. They work in the apartment complex surrounding the area.
All right, from the top, what happens? We work around here and we see the box. We took the nails out there, we popped it open, and then we opened it. It was a body in there. It was a dead body in there.
When they opened it up, they found the body covered in quilts, called 9/11. It shocked us to find that this body had been sitting here on the sidewalk in a box in a Lincoln Center neighborhood, and nobody bothered to call in about it. We start canvassing right away. And a couple of them said, yeah, we've seen it here for a few days. We didn't know how it got there or anything like that. So at this point, we've got nothing. We don't know who the victim is or what happened. The ME calls us a few days later, says the cause of death was asphyxiation, and that there was a lot of blunt trauma to the body, to the head especially. So we're spending our days and nights now canvassing this large apartment complex. And that's not coming up with anything. We're handing out flyers to all the people on the buses that go by. Nothing. Our captain looked at the clothing photos that we had. He said, that's a pretty unusual blouse. Let's put it on TV. Within half an hour after that being on TV, a gentleman calls up and says, I recognize whose clothes those are. And he tells us it's a woman who works at the Metropolitan Opera over in Lincoln Center. He tells us where she lived and
that, as far as he knew, she had been in Florida visiting a sick aunt. Go over to the apartment that night. We'd like to ask you a few questions. They interviewed this gentleman who's in the apartment, probably about 65 years old. Turns out he's the victim's brother. 2 or 3 weeks ago, she went to Florida to take care of my aunt. Well, we have some sad news. My sister was killed. She was murdered. Sure it was my sister? That's her. Look, I got a sick mother in the back that I got to see to. Excuse me. And he's just not talking. And they find it weird. He's living in this apartment now, and there's an elderly woman, his mother, bedridden, also in the apartment. How you doing? We get in touch with another family member who's living in Paris. And she gives us a little background on him. His wife at the time had passed away. Never had a steady job, but he was always going from one scheme to another to make money. Lady, I've got something special to show you. He ran some kind of costume jewelry scam. He was trying to sell it on the sidewalk. Old gold. They don't make gold like this anymore. He lived off his wife's income for a long time when they had married, what have you. So we bring him to the station house, and he's in the interview room all night long. And there was something about this guy. He was just very monotone. He wasn't saying a lot, and what he did say wasn't really being helpful. He'd just sit there, and in a long time, he just denied knowing what happened to his sister.
Look at us when we're talking to you. Don't turn away.
Then late in the morning, or late in the night, and early the next morning, he says to us, all right, I tell you what. You give me a large diet soda. I'll tell you what you want to know. Okay. Now, we're looking at this guy. He wears a colostomy bag. And we give him his diet soda, and he starts drinking it down. He says, okay, here's what happened. I had a fight with my sister.
I can't take this anymore. I'm in there taking care of Mom. You're sitting there watching television?
She wanted me out of the apartment because I didn't contribute anything. She went down to take care of our aunt. And when she came back, she wanted me gone. When she came back, I waited for her inside the vestibule.
Hello? Hello? Mom?
I took this socket wrench, I beat her over the head. And I went, my mother was yelling for me. I went and I fed her. And I went back and I couldn't bear to look at my sister's face there on the floor. So I took a plastic bag and wrapped it over her face. And that is what actually killed her. She suffocated. So now he's sitting there saying to himself, I have to get rid of this body. He walked down to West 43rd Street to a lumber yard. Now he's up in the 70s now somewhere. Walks down there with a hand cart, has the dimensions of the plywood box that he wants to build. Gets the wood, walks all the way back. Builds this box, puts her in it, covers her with quilts, etc. And he walks it from where he's living on 72nd Street down to 66 and 11th. And we couldn't believe that he could do it because he was a frail guy with this colostomy bag on, but he did. As cool as can be, he said, that's what happened, and, I did it. He showed no remorse whatsoever. It was just like cold. One of the veteran homicide detectives said he was one of the coldest guys he'd ever seen. Ended up going to trial, got convicted to life, died in prison about 3-4 years later. It was a shame that, here's this woman taking care of two elderly people, and this guy kills her because he's afraid of doing something for himself, getting a job, for instance.
One night I was working in the 81st precinct in the Bedford-Stuyvesant area of Brooklyn. I get a call from a female who tells me that she has information on a homicide. She says that she's in the deli and She hears a gunshot, and she looks out, and she sees this man pushing something out of the passenger side of the car onto the ground. The man closes the door, and he took off in his cab, and he left. And when that person took off, she got a little bit closer and noticed that it was a body on the ground. Now, the man doesn't see her, but she sees him enough to see what he looks like to give us a description. I think the guy who might have did this looks like Santa Claus. And I said, what do you mean Santa Claus? And she said, yeah, he looked just like Santa. A jolly guy with a belly. He had a long beard, suspenders. He looked just like Santa Claus, Chris Kringle. It's going to be kind of hard in this neighborhood to find out who Santa Claus is because this is a predominantly black neighborhood. So, of course, we didn't believe him. My partners and I, we go out to the scene, which is on Atlantic Avenue, and the uniform officers, when we arrive, have the area cordoned off for tape. There's a body face down. There's blood on the ground. When I approached the victim and looked at the victim, who was a male black, I looked at the identification that he had on him. We ran his criminal record, his criminal history, and we found out that he had been arrested numerous times. The uniform cops informed us there was nobody around. After we spoke with them and took pictures, we decided that we had to do a canvass. We go out and knock on the door. We start speaking to people in the neighborhood and ask them if they saw or heard anything. The canvass that we did didn't really turn up anything. The people that we spoke to, no one could tell us anything. No one saw anything. Didn't know anything about it. Didn't hear anything about it. So this woman was really our only clue to help us. I took her information and I went back to the precinct with my partners, and we tried to figure out and put this thing together as to what happened. So we started calling around, and we really got nowhere with anything but our phone calls to all the car services in the area. Maybe he was a cab driver from not the Bedford Stuyvesant area, but maybe the south part of Brooklyn. In Brooklyn, in the south part of Brooklyn, nothing. Nobody could give us any information. But the cab services said they had nobody that fit the description of Santa Claus that worked for them. In the precinct, the uniform cops, one of them came upstairs to us and told us that there was a fight in the area with some kids yesterday. And some kids had traveled from Long Island to Brooklyn to attend a party. And the officer also told us that some of the kids took cabs out from Long Island and then went back home. So after we gathered the 61s, which are the complaint reports from the cops, and we reviewed the information where these kids lived at, we started interviewing them one by one. And we caught a break. I found this one kid who I spoke with who said to me that, yes, that he indeed took a cab out from Long Island to Brooklyn to a party. We started putting two together, and we said, well, maybe we should call some car services in the Long Island area. We called up Nassau County, which we got nowhere with them, and then we called Suffolk County detectives. We spoke with the detectives on the phone, and they told us that they had somebody indeed that fit the description of Santa Claus who works in one of the car services out here. I said, great, we're going to come out and we'll meet with you guys, or we may have to talk to this individual. So we traveled out to Suffolk County from Brooklyn. Detectives took us over to the car service, and the woman that worked in dispatch told us that the person that we were looking for wasn't in today. He was off, but he had lived in the neighborhood, and it seemed that everybody in the detectives in Suffolk County knew where this individual lived because he's kind of popular. We went to his house, we knocked on his door. His brother opened the door first. Looking for your brother. And we started describing him. The beard, the popper, he looked like Santa Claus. And he goes, yeah, it's my brother. He's home right now. What did he do? And I said, well, we'd rather talk to you. We'd like to talk to your brother. So the brother is in the apartment. And while we're in the apartment, I noticed all these paper bags on the floor. And I said, oh, did you just go shopping? Or something? I said, what are you doing with all these paper bags? And he goes, no, my brother's a war veteran, and he collects guns. We start looking in the bags, and we notice all these guns, hundreds of rifles and handguns. So the brother comes out of the back, and I was shocked, along with the Suffolk County detectives, because they couldn't believe it either. He looks just like Santa Claus. He maybe a little shorter than I am, much shorter than I am, round belly, the beard looked just like Santa. When I am Chris Kringle. He came out to us, and we told him we wanted to talk to him.
You guys came a long way, didn't you?
Yeah, we did.
You found me sooner or later.
He also told me that, listen, I took his gun also. I said, really? He says, yeah, I'll show you where it is. Hey.
Rob, how's that? This is my gun. I shot him with.
There's his gun. And this is the other gun I had in my pocket as a backup. just in case the other one wouldn't work. So we took Santa Claus back with us in the car in Brooklyn.
What?
And when we got to the precinct, the 81st precinct, and we started talking to him, he started crying. I mean, the man cried so much, cried like a baby. I mean, he was really, really upset. He felt so bad about killing that man. He said that he left him no choice. And then I asked him what happened, and he told me that he picked up a fare in Brooklyn. He went out and dropped some kids off at a party. He stopped off on Atlantic Avenue and he picked up an individual. Because it was cold, he asked him to sit in the front seat so he could warm up a little bit. And while he was in the front seat, the man said to the guy who looks like Santa Claus, "This is a stick up." And he goes, "Stick up? What do you mean?" He goes, "You know what I mean, old man. Give me your money." And he goes, "You want all my money?" He goes, "Yeah, I want all your money."
Hey, you want the money in my left pocket? I said, yo, you want the money in my right pocket? He said, yeah, I want all your money. I said, give it to him. I hit 3-4 times like that. What's the money? How about that?
He didn't want to shoot him, but he was going to be either him or this other guy. He felt it was better to save his life. And after he shot him, he said that he opened the passenger door and he pushed him out into the street, closed his door, took off, and went back to his house in Suffolk County, Long Island. He was very upset. We all sat him in the precinct and we notified the district attorney, the writing DA, which we're always required to do when you work homicides. And once we called the DA came down. We felt really bad for him because he was really the victim here. And he was scared for his life. And he chose to defend himself. The district attorney who came down felt the same way. As a matter of fact, she was almost in tears because she felt bad that he looked like Santa Claus and that he was driving and then this individual tried to rob him. So she knew that he was going to probably be acquitted or not be charged with the murder. He was not indicted by the Brooklyn DA's office, and he was let go. And I later became known as the detective that raced Santa Claus.
Partners in Crime, case 1235.
I was in the police department for approximately 21 years. 10 of those years were in uniform and in the streets of East Harlem, and the other 11 were at the detective division, working homicide cases, missing person cases, assault cases, all in the streets of the Bronx. The victim in this crime was pretty punctual. He would arrive at approximately 7 o'clock in the morning at his place of business on Jerome Avenue in the Bronx. His business was selling garbage cans and plastic bags. Very lucrative business. When he arrived, there were individuals waiting for him. He was stopped by a single individual who he was in conversation with for about 15 to 20 seconds. This individual at this point pulled out a gun and fired 6 times. He was brought to the hospital. A month later, he died and expired. The victim in this crime was pretty punctual. He would arrive at approximately 7 o'clock in the morning at his place of business on Jerome Avenue in the Bronx. When he arrived, there were individuals waiting for him. He was stopped by a single individual who pulled out a gun and fired 6 times. He was brought to the hospital. A month later, he died and expired. I began my investigation by interviews of his wife, who in my first conversation with her, she explained to me that she had an insurance policy of $600,000 on him. And I was curious about how long he had it and who was paying for it. And she stopped me dead in my tracks and requested a lawyer. That like really threw me off. Why does she want to be lawyered up? I'm trying to solve the homicide of her husband. So now I had to really start thinking and saying, okay, maybe I'm wrong here. You know, maybe I should really take a real good look at her. The employees of the victim's company were adamant about if anybody had anything to do with the death of their boss, it would have been his business partner who was from Fairfield, New Jersey.
$500,000 you took from me. I want it back, and I want it back now.
The fella in Fairfield, New Jersey had extended credit for plastic bags to the deceased, to the victim.
If I don't get that money by tomorrow, you're a dead man. Damn it, am I the only one working around here? Come on!
The bookkeeper. She had basically told me of the scam that this individual was doing by skimming millions of dollars out of his company so he didn't have to pay taxes. Next call I made was to the Justice Department, and I was introduced to several investigators who, in the beginning, were kind of like leery of getting involved in the case until I explained the amount of money that was involved. Okay, I got this, the wife of the victim with a heavy insurance policy. I have the owner of the company that supplied the deceased with his product. I began to scratch my head a bit now at this point. One of the interviews I conducted was with a driver of the main business associate of the company in Fairfield, New Jersey. I had asked him, I gave him a camera and asked him, could you just take pictures of anything during the day over at the company in Fairfield. I said, take pictures of everything, people, cars, everything. And he did. And one of the pictures was a black pickup truck, Ford pickup truck. Bingo. That particular vehicle was identified by witnesses and police officers in the Bronx as being on the scene when the homicide was committed. This was the big break we were waiting for, the truck. I located the owner, who was an employee of the company. I went to his residence upon arrival, myself and one of the detectives from the Justice Department. We interviewed a female. We knocked on the door. She opened the door. We asked her name, and it was the same name as the owner of the vehicle. I proceeded to interview her. I could see she was very nervous. At that point, there's a knock on the door. And who is it? Her husband, the worker from the and owner of the truck. He was very friendly, came in. What are you guys doing here? I explained. Oh, you must be, you're the detective from the Bronx. I says, yeah, that's right. I'm the detective from the Bronx. After about 10 or 15 minutes, him and his wife went in a room together. They wanted to talk. I let them go in and they talk. They come out and he says, listen, I'm going to give you everything. What can you help me out? I says, I can definitely help you out. I says, I can't promise you that you're going to walk from this case, but if you come aboard, I will back for you. I'll get up and help you. At this point, he gives me the whole thing about the case.
At the job, my boss, he approached me. And he was actually talking to me about, certain things that he needed to get done.
He was approached by the president of the company and the vice president to kill the other business associate in the Bronx.
I tried to just get away from that and told him that anything, whatever he wanted me to do, I can't do it.
At that time, this individual had a reputation for being a little tough guy. Was not a tough guy. He was a pussycat. He stated to them, I can't do this, but I can get people who can.
I did talk to someone, but other than that, I ain't got nothing to do with that.
He found two of his friends that were from the Washington Heights section of Manhattan, who he knew were bad. He contacted these two individuals, and they agreed for a sum of money to kill the other business associate in the Bronx. Upon receiving this information, I knew the wife was not involved. the owner of the vehicle agrees to put a wire on. And he states that at least once a week they have meetings in regards to this case. The president of the company and vice president and the driver of the truck, they would go into a room that they thought was pretty safe, soundproof, that nobody could hear them talking.
Okay, so but we gotta be on the same page. We gotta know what's going on. So what's the latest?
Well, that detective takes me for the middle for that. He said he would.
That guy from the Bronx?
Yeah, a detective.
I know that detective.
They came out and said that that detective from the Bronx is too stupid and they'll never catch us.
Just keep your head down. We'll be fine. It'll be over.
The meeting is over and we play the tape. I become the center of the laugh. I'm the dumb mother detective from the Bronx. Okay. The district attorneys from the Justice Department and the district attorney from the Bronx figure, okay, we have a case here now. At that point, we all gathered together, and on a early morning hours, it was 7, 8 o'clock. I said to the Justice Department people and the postal inspector, let's walk in and get him. Let's go. When I walked in with the other officers, the employees knew what was going on. They stood up and started clapping. I said, whoa, wait a minute. Where's the president of the company? He says, oh, he's out in the factory area. He just exited there. He must have seen you guys pulling up. So I proceeded out into the factory area, had my gun out, walked down this aisle, and found the president standing there. I asked him to put his hands up on the wall and put his hands behind his back, and I proceeded to cuff him. While I was cuffing him, I said to him, do you know who I am? He says, no, I don't know who you are. And I said, I'm the dumb mother from the Bronx.